Hi, Paul and Cyan. Thanks a lot for coming on the podcast.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
So we were going to talk about the book that you have, which is a primer for the Zeta race, which is very extensive, at least 500 pages. But first of all, just could you tell us how you got this information?
That's a really long story, but basically I went from having visitation by the Zetas when I was 2 years old, all the way through to today. I developed as a medium, and through those mediumistic abilities I was able to trance the Zetas. I was able to evidence them as well through those trance communications by asking them to, when they were speaking, if they would come and land a craft, and so they decided that they would do that, and I had a whole lot of people present when the craft landed. So we were able to, over the years of extensive discussion with them, have them come into the house, land in craft, talk for themselves, and the information was also put into multiple books as well. Plus they've also done a lot of healings.
And so you've had extensive contact throughout your life.
Yeah.
And Cyan, you also had this.
Yeah, I also have had contact with them since I was at least 3 or 4 years old. Is my first earliest memory. My contact has been slightly different to Paul's. They've progressed and changed the way that they contact people now compared to back in the 50s, 60s. By the late 70s, that contact style had changed. But yeah, I mean, it's where do you even begin to start going through it all? I know I've had a lot of the screen memories that they use just drop. Neither of us have ever needed any regression work to access the memories we have of them. Those memories are just there to readily available for us, and have been, even if we didn't fully understand what we were experiencing at the time. Yeah. And our experiences and contact with the race happen at least a minimum once a week, you know, like Paul said, right through to today. And, you know, we saw them last night. You know, it doesn't end for us, it just continues.
And when you saw them last night, was that like kind of physical? Did you meet them out somewhere?
Did I what, sorry?
Did you meet them somewhere?
Oh, did I meet them? No, well, they came into the house, so I didn't need to go anywhere. Yeah, and they were physical beings, yeah.
And do you know they're coming, or do they just show up?
Quite often we get a sense, don't we, of when they're going to be around, but then other times, no, we have no prior warning, and they just come. They know they're welcome, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So for you, I assume it's quite a positive contact, but for a lot of people out there, they see it as quite negative and terrifying. Yeah. And what's your viewpoint on that? Do you feel that if somebody's being abducted, they wake up at night, you know, that classic idea, and they get terrified, there doesn't seem to be anything positive about being just taken and then these ETs do whatever they want to them. But do you find that actually there's a lot more to it than that? Yeah,
well, that's the thing about working with the race for so many years, is that you start to understand all the different nuances of contact. So basically you are incarnated as a human. Your higher self has created a construct, a local construct that you call your mind, and your mind filters everything around it through that construct. When a person is visited by extraterrestrials, they're visited in a way that the local construct may or may not cause problems for that person. And so often the beings will come in a way that seems very strange and peculiar. That's why it's called the phenomenon. Often they'll come and visit their own. So when people are being visited, they won't, or if they think abducted, they don't realise that they're probably being contacted by their own race. And so it's like being taken to the doctor when you don't want to go, and having a procedure performed upon you. You may not actually understand why that's happening, but we need to understand that if they're not careful in the way that they are working with us, if they don't apply screen memory technology, then what happens is you can lose your mind. You can become unstable after contact. And so a lot of people are contacted in dream states, in the astral realm. They're contacted through that as well. They're contacted in distortions, through portals. There's multiple ways for humans to be contacted, but ultimately it all seems like obfuscation, because people in the morning rarely remember what actually happened. They'll have a narrative about what they think happened, but they won't remember what actually happened. And that's all to do with making sure that your mind remains firm. I would use the word firm, so that a person doesn't feel like they're losing their mind. I'm not justifying the way that extraterrestrials contact humans at all. I'm just saying that there are reasons why extraterrestrials contact humans and the way that they contact humans. It's the same as Gary Nolan, who's currently working with the CIA. He's been asked to work with military personnel that have come in contact with craft because they've now got physical changes to their cellular structure in their brain. Obviously, people are realising that when these pilots come in contact with UFO or UAP, that there are fields around these technologies, and these technologies can cause changes in the human structure and DNA. And it isn't just the craft that can do that, it's also the field that travels with the extraterrestrials as well. So,
yeah, and don't be under any illusion. When we've worked through our contact, we had just as many scary, misunderstood contact experiences in the early days that were beyond terrifying, which there are no words to describe. And it's only through, pure stubbornness of wanting to truly understand what's going on, strength of mind, that we've gradually worked to where we are at the moment.
Right, okay. And so when you talk about these changes, the DNA and things, is it all positive? Or are they doing it on purpose, or is it just a byproduct?
I think it's just a byproduct of contact. It's the same as when in the past, people like Kathleen Martin, who we were discussing before, when she was contacted, as a byproduct of that contact, she ultimately had problems with her, her body, obviously. And once the Zetas found out that Kathleen was having a problem, because she was talking to them through me, they then reversed the problem that she had. They don't purposely go about to shift and change people's genetic structure, immune system, neurological processes, but they probably don't know what changes are being made, or wouldn't have known in the past, they would now, what changes were being randomly applied to people because of their technology. So as they've learnt more about the human race and how their presence affects humans, they've changed the way that they contact humans now. A lot of the contact is through dream states rather than through physical contact.
So I'm getting the impression you're saying that, as human beings, we're on two different levels in a way. There's our consciousness as the people we are as humans, but then there's another level to us, another part of our consciousness, what some people might call your higher self or your spirit, and that perhaps you agreed to alien contact before you were born. It was part of the plan.
I think it actually goes past that. It's the fact that before you were born, you came from somewhere else. That's the first thing. People keep thinking that everybody comes from what's called the spirit realm. But the truth is that 30% of the people on planet are probably hybrid humans or have a blended consciousness. So they could have a portion of spirit realm consciousness. They could also have a portion of a race consciousness. And then using the symbiotic relationship of consciousness, they can have a hybrid mind. It's no great stretch to think for some people that they're as hybrids living now as humans, and when they pass over, they return back to where they came from, back to spirit realm and back to extraterrestrial point of origin.
And so the impression you're giving here is something that a lot of people have started to suspect over the last few years, is that UFOs and aliens, they're not just like Star Trek where it's just physical being.
No.
So you've got this information in the book and it's been channeled to you. Is it from somebody called Keek? Is that right?
Initially, Keek was one of the communicators, but Keek actually physically came on planet years ago when I was 18 years old. And I had 3 friends with me when he came. So that was the first time that he came on craft. The second time that he came was in 2013. He arrived with about 9 other Zetas, and he walked around about 20 of us.
And is it a thing where, they're just like us in a way? They've got their own society, they have family, they work, they have leisure time? Because you get the impression sometimes some abductees describe the Greys as kind of automatons, almost like they're just biological robots.
But the reason that people believe that is because when they go on craft and they look, the narrative that they're given is that they see these containers and maturation chambers, and these are the narratives that the Zetas and the Greys want the humans to see. But the reason is because this is quite a complicated subject, so I'll try and sort of talk about it quite quickly. They do create human-looking containers, and they can populate those containers for up to 3 hours at a time. That means that they can be walking around looking like humans. The other time is that when their own physical bodies are coming to their use-by date, they take samples of their genetics and they create their own container again, biological entity, and they just basically move from their current container to their new one. Now, if somebody from the outside was looking at this, they'd be going, well, those are just biological containers that are robots. But if you understand that you're actually performing the same process, but the intermediary process that you're using is spirit realm. So you have come from somewhere, you've now populated a container that was created by your parents for you, and when you're finished with it, you'll go back to spirit realm, and then when you choose to come back again through another parent, another whatever, you'll just recycle yourself back through into this physical existence. So humans are doing exactly what the Zetas are doing, but they're not needing to use the process of spirit realm to do it. In regards to the Zetas and their societal function, the Zetas don't generally work the way that humans do. They do have a family, they have a singular child, they have a partner that they stay with for their existence, for the length of their existence. They don't need to sleep. I mean, generally they sleep once a week, but the way that they achieve that is in a resonation chamber. We know a lot about their society and a lot about their function. And that's why the books have been written, A Primer of the Zeta Race and the Zeta Interviews, and other books as well about it.
And so in the book, I wanted to ask you about some of the things that you've got there. You talk about the Zeta home planet. Now, is this Zeta Reticuli, which is, people talk about this in UFO circles?
Yeah. So the reticulum is just a named area in out there. And, it's like saying to somebody that is able to move from one place to another via a craft, where do you come from? They may go, well, yeah, look, we'll give you that name, the reticulum, because you know that name in your Earth language. But a lot of these craft are city size, like they're massive, and they don't necessarily come from the reticulum. But if, just for the sake of discussion, yes, we could say that they're from the reticulum.
I talked to somebody the other day who's got a book that talks about people who were invited to pilot the craft.
No,
and they said that the
we're
craft...
talking to Grant Cameron.
Yeah, and the craft were themselves kind of intelligent, live beings.
Yeah.
Is that the impression you get?
Definitely the craft are intelligent beings, but the people that believe that they're piloting these craft are being given a narrative by the extraterrestrials. So they're being told something, they're in a holographic simulation, they being trained, it's all very interesting for the local construct, the human. They believe it. They would believe it. It'd be the same if I put you in a flight simulator and told you it was a real airplane. You'd be, have white knuckle syndrome as you were, being trained into this thing. But the truth of the matter is these craft are sophisticated, and they have linkages to telepathic means of beings that are well beyond humans' capacity to meld with these craft. But the Zetas know, as do other races, that humans like to, be in control. They like to be trained. They like to be taught. And so quite often, while that person is being given that narrative, they're probably off, something else is happening to them completely different. It could be that they are actually extraterrestrial hybrids themselves, and while the human component and the construct is being fed the narrative, the extraterrestrial component is separated from the physical form, and they're actually just standing over there discussing with the other extraterrestrials. It could be that simple.
Okay. And you mentioned other races there. Is there a kind of, there's lots of different races, some of them maybe like the ETs that you talk to that are kind of have this reincarnation thing, a spiritual thing. I'm not sure I'm using the right words, but then there are other ETs who are more like us, who don't have that capacity to do it at will, or can't do out of body, or I'm not sure I'm making sense. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Like the Anunnaki, they use a spirit realm process. The Arcturians don't need it because they're interdimensional. Sirius A entities would probably have some sort of holding ground, or you could say spirit realm. I'm just trying to think of some of the other races. Yeah, there would be. Look, all races require some way to interchange with a physical form. We also know that the greys that we call the Zetas, because there are 63 races, and it's like calling all humans, but there's a whole lot of different races. They have a technology whereby if a child, of an extraterrestrial child, is killed, they're able to hold the consciousness of the child in a box. It's a little technological box that they have. And the box technology is used to house the consciousness of the child until a new container is maturated. And once it is, then the child's consciousness is placed back into the body. So there's various techniques for moving consciousness in and out of physical form. So it's not just that these are biological entities and they're just sort of being told what to do by the reptilians or anything like that. There's a lot more back end technologies and things behind all these processes and consciousness as well.
And so is there a hierarchy? I'm sure I've heard some abductees say occasionally they would see what they call a mantid being, and they got the impression that it was the mantids that were in charge. Is that nonsense?
So the thing is look, I know what people think they see, and Cyan and I over the years have worked out that there's about 6 or 7 different types of screen memories, and there's a reason why a specific screen memory is used. There's also like a Class B screen memory is called a narrative, and so some races may give you a conscious script to follow, and the script is that you're seeing mantis beings and they're working with the reptilians, and the reptilians are telling the greys what to do, and it's like some sort of a movie script that you'd be watching and you'd believe it, and a lot of people have fed that, and they believe it, people believe it, and they believe they're very comfortable in that construct that they have. But that's because those races that are initiating that type of abduction behaviour actually don't want you to know who they really are. And so they're purposely giving you a narrative that makes you believe one thing while something else is happening. And this is another, obviously this is another very, very big subject.
Okay, it seems like it's getting very complicated. So there's a lot of talk in UFO field about disclosure and, landing on the White House lawn and all that stuff. But what is the end game? If there is an end game, if they're interacting with the human race, is there a plan? What's happening?
Well, it's actually pretty easy to sort through this. So let's say that you're an extraterrestrial and that you've got access to view a timeline. If you've read the primer of the Zeta race, you'll understand what are called synthetic quantum environments. We'll call them SQEs. Now, with a timeline, because if you view the timeline as an observer, you can change the outcome of the timeline. So they'll take a copy of the timeline, the current timeline. They'll then put it into a synthetic quantum environment. They'll then view each of the individuated time slots. It's not linear, time isn't linear. And then what they'll do is they'll take a copy of the observable timeline, and then they'll view that, because once that's been viewed, it can't be changed because it's a copy, right, of a copy. The copy of the copy has determined that in the future humans will be travelling and moving out of the solar system. They'll be bringing their technology with them. And so the races have gone, well, we've got, a 500-year plan. The 500-year plan, say 500 years, is that we'll incarnate back as humans in 1940. We'll be 30% of the human race. We'll then have some levels of disclosure in 2021, 22. What we'll then do is, as that UAP disclosure starts to come to the forefront of people's thinking, and USO, which is the submersible objects, what will happen is people will start to develop a framework for their local construct to understand about moving and technology and about travelling. And slowly, humanity is coming to a point now where they understand that they will be using all those technologies to support their physical realities, their health, their psychological structures, their telepathic ability. And then once they've done that, and of course we know that Elon Musk and other people are looking to have, whole civilizations off planet. These races are seeing in the future that the humans are going to be part of a community. So disclosure actually isn't about now, it's about what's going to happen in the future. And it's being planned for so far for the last 70 to 80 years. And you'll have other people that have been around, especially the older contactees and abductees, that will talk about, that's what the extraterrestrial races that they've spoken to have told them, that, there was a big push years ago for extraterrestrials to come to planet, exchange some technologies for various reasons to support humanity, and then in the future go off-world. So, disclosure can take years, if hundreds of years.
And if the human race is so warlike, which we see all around us through the decades, are they worried about us moving off the planet?
That's a really good question. What do you think?
Yeah, I think when you've got the likes of Elon Musk kind of talking about, was it nuclear-based terraforming of planets, that they would be worried about humans moving into the wider cosmos, away from the Earth. Absolutely,
Yeah. Okay. And so at the beginning of the book, the first section about the Zeta race is the very first part of it says the Zeta home planet. But is it actually that they've got a home planet? Because it sounds a lot more interdimensional than that.
Yeah. No, it's actually so the thing about the Zetas is they do hold a three-dimensional space. So they're able to, as I've said, land and craft. The craft are physical. Their biological containers are physical as well. But the difference is like you're a multidimensional consciousness and you're existing in a 3D space, but while also holding a multidimensional aspect of consciousness to yourself. So the Zetas have a 3D representation of themselves. They also have a representation of themselves on planet, and that doesn't mean that they stay there. It's like, well, let's jump from now, 2022, to 200 years from now for the human race. Some people are here, other people have travelled, other people are now living off planet, they're living Mars, a whole lot of other places. They've got a lot of technology to support them as well. And so then someone says, and where do the humans come from? You can't say that they no longer exist in one place. They exist in multiple places.
And there's been stories over the decades of military people saying UFOs have hovered over nuclear weapons silos and switched off the warheads and the rockets. Is that like they're just trying to show that they can do that if they need to?
I think that there's probably a few different reasons why that takes place. One is because they can show that they can do that, but I think the other thing is that they also learn about the technology that humans have as well. If they can, it's not just about turning it off, it could be about reading it, gathering as much information from it as possible while it's actively in flight or while it's being activated. Quite often the technology just sits there and does nothing until it's activated or about to be activated, and then it goes to its full form. In its full form, they'd learn a lot more about that. Then, of course, if you take it one more step, it could be that on a timeline that there's the capacity for them to see some devastation take place and that they just don't want that devastation to happen.
So is it the thing they can test timelines? I suppose they could, I don't know, they could have full disclosure and everybody knows they're here, and then they see that the timeline progresses and the human race implodes. So they think that's not a good timeline. We'll go back and we won't show ourselves.
Yeah. This is a little bit complicated again. So in the past, many generations ago, I think you'll see that Al Bielek has talked about this. He was part of the Montauk project. There was some problems with the time locks. So timelines, basically, if you are an infinite being across multiple timelines, which means that you live in infinite frequencies, each of those timelines are locked together using time locking, whatever that technology is. So there's the problem that if the timelines were seen to be inappropriate for a race, it may be that there's a problem with the timelines. So these races would be looking at the specifics of timelines and then saying, well, it's possible to undo something or to redo. And we know that from another project that took place. Have you ever heard of the Skull Group with Robin Foy?
Yeah, I've got the book, and I interviewed Robin on my podcast.
So when the Skull Group was running, Robin and I used to talk all the time. We started off around the same time, and he ended up that they had portal corruption. We did as well. At the 5-year mark, we had portal corruption, the same as Skull, and that was because we came to the same conclusion that there was something in the future that was trying to sample at a 5-year point what was going on the timeline. And Skull actually got shut down. That was one of the reasons, because of portal corruption. We didn't get shut down because the Zetas were able to bypass the problem.
So the Skull experiment was kind of about physical mediumship, wasn't it? Spirit communication.
Yeah.
And they had those films that were locked in boxes that had... But it didn't seem that the Skull experiment had anything to do with ETs and UFOs. It just seemed to be about the spirit world.
In the end, if you read Witnessing the Impossible by Robin Foy, the last part of the book, the third of the book, is about extraterrestrial contact.
They had a blue being, they called.
They had Blue turn up. He was a grey blue being. They also had a small UFO materialise in the seance room. You see, this is the difference. As mediums, we're mediums. We also have sat for physical mediumship as well. People seem to think that the two are totally isolated from each other. They're actually not. They're not isolated. Yes, extraterrestrial contact is separated from spirit realm, but the difference is that mediumship and the abilities that mediums have, deep trance mediums and also physical mediums, is that they can provide a compressed environment of consciousness that allows manifestation to take place from spirit people, such as independent direct voice, or through extraterrestrials materializing in the house if they want.
And so with the materialization, is it a thing where it's kind of interdimensional, and they're just, if an ET wants to appear in a room, they just move from that dimension to this one?
There's multiple ways to do that. If you know about physical mediumship, you'll know about quanta and the way that apports are created. So basically the etheric body, well, firstly there's quanta, there's consciousness, there's then the etheric body, and then what will take place is that there's fine matter, and fine matter then populates the etheric body of the apport. That's how it moves from one realm to the other. Well, the races do the same thing. They just populate consciousness with fine matter, and I think that's described as well in the book.
And so you communicate with Keek and
many others, not just Keek.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've got these huge books full of so much information. Yeah. It seems to contradict, in a way, this idea that they're sneaking around all the time and they don't want people to know about them. Yep. Is this just...
See, it comes down to this. Let's say that you're being abducted, okay? But you've got screen memories. You don't know you're being abducted, or you've got some faint memory that you may have been abducted, or you actually remember that you were abducted, but you don't know what to do about it. I went through all that. 40, 50 years ago, I went through all that. And then I decided when I was 40, I'd had enough of the games. And I confronted them one day when they came into the house. They stood over the top of me to perform some sort of a procedure, and I said to them, "Don't put me to sleep." And they looked at me and I said, I won't fight you, because I had fought them physically when I was 28 in my house. I took 3 of them to take me down, but once they realised that I was no longer going to try to have any physical altercation with them, we came to terms, because, originally it's like you're being abducted. You don't want any of this to take place. But once you realise that you can actually communicate with them on levels whereby there's going to be some telepathic communication take place, they can then start to relax around you as well and start to bring information through you. Now, there are a lot of people that have had contact and they're painting, they've got symbols, all these sorts of things. They've got books, they've got information. There's a lot of people that are being used in lots of different ways to bring information through. I just think that it's the social media that's the problem. And a whole lot of people now, especially in the last 2 years, they haven't really had any contact. They're just out there saying that they're doing CE5, see a flash of light in the sky. They say that they're being abducted, but they've got no evidence that this is taking place. They've got no lifelong experience. Look, it could be in 20 or 30 years, they can look back and they go, yeah, I've had contact. It's happened over multiple times. We tell everybody that they should journal everything, that they should document everything, that people should have something to look back on, because there'll be a certain pattern that will evolve in your contact. And this is why people need to document it, because if they don't, all these random occurrences may actually add up to something or nothing. But so the information's come through Geek and various other communicators as well. And they've also been able to do healings and do other things to evidence themselves. It's very important that people that are having contact try to evidence their contact as well.
And if somebody, a podcaster, approached you and said, could we record something where you're bringing one of your communicators through, would that be something they would do? I'm not going to ask you to do it, because it doesn't seem right to me in a way. It's almost like asking you to do, I don't know. Would it be something that they would do? They would consider that to be a good idea, do you think?
They wouldn't consider it to be a good idea, but they wouldn't consider it to be a bad idea either. I do public sittings, yourself, if you research physical mediums or mediumship, that mediums will often do public sittings. I do them all the time, and the Zetas come through and talk to people through myself. In one of the last public sittings that I did about a month ago, half the people that were there said that they saw the Zetas walking around the room as a distortion, not physically fully formed. But this was in red light, by the way, not in darkness, under normal dark physical conditions.
Okay.
So I thought that was pretty good of them to do that for them.
Yeah. So if somebody sees a UFO, like perhaps really close up, it seems to me that they don't have to show themselves. The ETs, they're perfectly capable of moving around without anybody seeing them.
Yeah.
So if you see one, is it because they're deliberately showing themselves to you?
It could be that. Well, okay. So we have to understand a couple of things. They move around in what's called space-time compression. So you're standing there and you're looking outside and you see a craft appear here, and next thing you look over there, it's 80,000 miles away, and it got there like that. Well, the difference is we have to just use some random numbers here. But if you're, and I always get this backwards when I say this, if your time function is 10 seconds and theirs is only 1 second, so it's a 10-to-1 ratio, they can move from here, they can be dematerialised, materialised, and then move from here. Now for you, your 10-second, it will be 10 seconds that you've stood there and seen it move from here to here. Do you see what I'm saying? Like there's a different time variable, a different ratio for time. And I usually get it round the wrong way.
You did.
And which I did. So there you go.
So for us, we'd be looking and they'd just be there, then they'd be 80,000. Right. So there 1 second passes, but for them, they've just gone really slowly.
Yeah, they've just cruised along, missed all the birds, no ducks. All this sorts of thing.
Yeah, but for us, it would be instant.
They can travel faster than the speed of light if they want to, but in Earth's atmosphere, they're not going to do that. So this is another thing about when you see an extraterrestrial, when people see extraterrestrials in the house, they just pop in and they pop out. That's because all they're doing is using technology to move into phase and out of phase. That's all they're doing. So they're moving into your time frame, showing themselves to you as a distortion or a physical form, moving back into their own time frame. That way they move out of your line of sight and you're no longer able to see them anymore.
And so that explains how the G-forces don't affect them, because that's one of the descriptions, isn't it? That they move so fast, they can change direction so quickly. And if somebody was inside the craft, the G-forces would, But the question asked before was that, are you seeing them because they want you to see them? Or is it they're not really fussed?
That's right. I totally went off track, didn't I? So it can be that they want you to see them. I know that there's times when they say, listen, we're here, and you will see them. But other times you could be in an altered state, and because you're in a different frequency yourself, you're able to see into their fabric where they are.
And then there are times where they don't realise you can see them.
Yes, there are times when they don't realise that you can see them at all. I was walking through the house one morning at 3 o'clock and walked up behind one. It was only a small one. And it was just standing there. And so I thought, I better not scare it. And I walked around the front and I leant down and said, I can see you. And, it just popped, disappeared. But the thing was, I was looking at it for at least a good full 10 seconds, trying to work out how not to scare it more than anything.
They don't like to be observed. So I think generally speaking these days, if you do see one, I would suggest it's because you're supposed to.
You're supposed to, yeah.
And so with your interactions that you're having, when you see them, is it almost like they're friends coming over for a visit, or is there a specific procedure that needs to be done?
They only ever come for a reason. They don't just come. They don't do social. There will be a purpose for their visit, and what that may be, we may never know. Sometimes we know exactly what's going on, and then sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just don't bother asking because we have so much contact.
We get contacted by a lot of people that are being contacted and they don't know what's going on. So we talk to them, we work out what's going on, we see what race is with the person. Generally that race will come to us. They'll come to us because the race will realise that we've already got really clear contact and that we're not terrified of, sort of interacting with them. We've had clear conscious contact with many beings come into the house, but those races belong to other people, or those races are working with other people. But they've realised that they can indicate to us certain things. I didn't say communicate, I said indicate. They can indicate certain things to us whereby we can then communicate that to the person. And the person could be, say, from Sirius A or from any race, but the beings are coming to us and telling us what they'd like them to know, but generally the people are so terrified and they're in their whole abduction dilemma that they're experiencing. There's no way for them to be communicated clearly with.
Yeah, I was talking to Preston Dennett the other day, and he said he's in contact with somebody in the north of England who just fights all the time. Any chance he gets, if he can physically fight them, he will. Yeah. And it seems like he's stuck in a kind of a terrified paradigm and that he can't see beyond it.
A lot of people are like that. A lot of people are terrified. They're fighting. I did. I fought them physically when I was 28. I realise now that it was going to always happen because of the miscommunication. Some people spend all their time reading about how bad everything is, and in the end, they'll never be able to change. It doesn't matter what they're told or what they would like to experience. And when you come from a fear narrative continually, that's what you'll get. You'll be treated that way.
And if somebody contacted you with telling you what's happening to them, and that race, you were able to communicate with them, and this person said, "Can you tell them to stop? Just ask them, say,
we do that, yeah.
Will they stop, or
Yeah, they do.
they say no?"
And
Okay.
quite often then what happens is the same person will contact us a few weeks later saying, "I've made a mistake. I miss them. Please ask them to come back." And we're like,
we just had a situation occur.
Literally in the last few weeks.
Okay. And have you ever tried to take pictures or video, or do you just feel like, oh, we don't need to bother with that, we're not fast?
When I first started sitting, people would try and slide audio recorders near the seat where I was in trance, and the brand new batteries in the devices would fail, and we didn't know why until we put a video camera, and we started filming when I was in trance state. We got a picture of me sitting inside a sphere, and the energy from the sphere would cause technology just to go a bit crazy. Myself, I also got burnt every single time they came for the first few years. So I'd always burnt down one side of my face. If anybody sat too close to me physically, within a metre and a half, they'd also get burnt as well.
But we do have photos of you in trance. And,
we've got audio of craft landing, that sort of thing.
But it's always on their terms. That if they only allow us to do that when they say, maybe, I don't know, we could ask, I suppose, can we? But generally, we just, out of respect, we don't bother them with, we don't need evidence.
Yeah.
We're so beyond needing evidence. We don't even think about it.
I was just thinking then, who's the evidence for? So I'll give you an example. Let's say that tomorrow somebody puts a picture up of a craft. Well, 50% of the people that see the craft are going to say that it's CGI. And some percentage are going to say it's Photoshop. Somebody's going to go, that looks real, and then they're all just going to fight with each other. So it doesn't matter what evidence is given to the public, they're never going to understand what that evidence is. It doesn't matter what you do, even if, go out there and get a film and take the footage, all the rest of it, you put it online, it'll either be taken down or it'll just be argued about.
So you communicate with them in a kind of trance, and they also visit you physically. Is there reason for the trance because they can't communicate properly when they're with you, or is it just another way of doing it?
Well, they don't speak English.
They don't speak in English,
so they don't speak.
We've got recordings of them speaking, but so they are clicking. They use a lot of clicking noises when they talk. But the difference is that with beings, as humans, are telepathic as well. If you can achieve telepathic communication using somebody's word pool, so you've got a specific word pool that you that you can access and create sentence structures with. The Zetas have to access my word pool, and they have to somehow describe to me using my very limited word pool. Now, for them, they'll have to work out what do these words specifically mean. And quite often in the beginning, the sentences would all be completely backwards, which I found highly amusing. I then had to reconstruct the sentences telepathically so that I knew what they were saying. Communication isn't just as clear as people think it should be. It's not a phone call. It's exactly the same as Silver Birch said, and he's a famous spirit communicator, that there's always a problem with communication, and quite often the spirit people get carried away with the onrush of the consciousness of the medium. Also, can extraterrestrial communicators be also carried away by the medium's mind as well?
Which is why it's important to evidence your contact, and why we spent so much time making sure that the beings speaking through you were who they said they were.
Look, William Treneat, the scientist that helped write the books, he's not the only scientist that has had conversations with us, but he's the only scientist that actually wanted to come forward and put his name to something. So, I really appreciate the work that William Treneat's done. I think that he's been quite brave to come forward,
Yeah.
in the face of peer pressure to not do so, I guess. Criticisms, those sorts of things. Yeah.
So we hear from, say, near-death experiencers when they have this kind of out-of-body experience that they go into this place of light, or it might be darkness, but they talk about feeling this unconditional love, this kind of love that's you just don't feel as a human. It's so fantastic. Is there any kind of emotional content with this communication you have? Do they talk about that sort of thing?
Generally, as mediums, when you're going into an altered state, you'll want to be sensing love as a baseline for your communication, right? As you move up into these out of these three-dimensional spaces into other dimensional areas, you're communicating with consciousness. That consciousness doesn't hold the same perceptions and biases as does the normal 3D states. It's not uncommon when communicating with these beings that you feel massive amounts of love.
And they have that for you, or is it just a kind of general thing between everything? It's like I don't know.
It's just just as it is, and Sion can attest to that. Many mediums can attest to that. People that have had NDEs can attest to that. But the difference is this: it's your belief structure that you hold within your consciousness, which will reflect back to you what you sense. So if you're a religious person and you have an NDE, you may, using your construct, believe that you are seeing a gateway or a light. Other people won't see anything, but they'll still sense love. Other people sense nothing.
And so it's this idea of love is something that's kind of part of nature and is a kind of just a background field to the universe?
Well, the thing is, if we have an understanding of, a theory, a hypothetical process, that source consciousness had to extend itself, and in doing so it created a three-dimensional and other dimensional reality known as the multiverse. In that way, what you're really doing when you're looking through the lens of the multiverse, you're actually seeing source consciousness. Because it's such a high vibrational frequency, you're sensing what is that frequency. People call it love, but it's just the opposite of the three-dimensional space, which is very, very slow frequency. Spirit people say that as well.
And so the ETs are at a higher vibration as well? Do they have to lower it, so to speak?
Well, spirit people have to, don't they? When they come to a medium to speak, they've got to lower their vibration. We call this heterodyning. So when we teach people to contact extraterrestrials, we show them how to use the heterodyning process, using their breath and harmonics, so they can create a construct of a better communication. Remember, these beings, they can be contacted under the right conditions. It just means that people need to be trained to do so.
Right, okay. And so there's something in the book there that's called conflict resolution in the spirit realm. Is that like a court or lawyers or something?
I would suggest that if you looked at that a bit further, that probably isn't what it means. It probably means something else. Like with that conflict resolution in spirit realm, what is it actually alluding to? Remember, the scientist that wrote the book would state what the Zetas had said, and then would give his opinion about what he believed the Zetas had said. So there's a few things in the book where William has put forward his own thoughts about something.
Okay. And are there beings that are kind of beyond the physical in a way that they're not capable of coming to Earth? That they're just beyond that?
Well, yeah. Okay, so if we start to think about, I'll give you an example. I don't know if anyone's ever explained spirit realm to you. Maybe they have, I'm not sure.
I've had so many explanations, and some of them are so contradictory. You know, you get to this point, you just can't be sure what's going on.
Well, that's great. So I'll give you my. I've been in the spirit realm. My dad died, and nobody knew that he'd passed over. And he came to me, and we talked for an hour. And he said, "I died." I said, "Yeah, I can see that because you're talking to me." And then the phone rang an hour later, and they said, "Oh, we just found your dad. He's been dead for an hour." I said, "I know." So I then travelled with my father into spirit realm, and I went to see where he was in Healing Hall. That's where everybody goes. They go to the Healing Hall initially. So the spirit realm, basically, if you just want to think of it quite simply, it's just a container, and the container has the ability to provide consciousness any experience that it wants to. If you think that you're in hell, then you believe you're in hell. If you believe you're in heaven, you believe you're in heaven. But the differences with the spirit realm is that it has an access point called a nexus. And the nexus allows celestials and other interdimensional entities to transition through the oversoul and incarnate into the physical, like you. Your point of origin could be that you have a celestial nature, right? So we know that there are beings that never need to incarnate and will never want to incarnate, but they definitely work in those upper levels of spirit realm. The reason we have a different opinion about spirit realm is because we work so closely with spirits, and those spirits have evidenced themselves in fantastic ways, birth and death certificates, all these things. They've talked to us, they've explained how things work, and we were quite happy to listen to what they had to say. We read and heard all of the different things that people have said about karmic debt and, the astral is the spirit realm, but it actually isn't. It's got nothing to do with spirit realm. People keep going that you can dream your way to spirit realm. No, you can't do that as well. And when you start to understand that there's things that it can't take place, it gets rid of the clutter. And once all that's gone, all those belief systems, spirit realm is actually quite a simple process. It's not complicated at all.
And so with the reincarnation, the idea is that you're living many lives to learn lots of different lessons, and that you're trying to get to a point where you've cleared all your karma and that you can ascend. I think it's a kind of
that's
Buddhist
all New Age stuff. Sorry, I know that what I'm saying is probably people are going, "Oh, that's terrible. You shouldn't say that." Just no. I think it's just rubbish that people have made up. And I know that people sort of feel that there's a need for karmic debt. There's a need for things to take place. But when you understand that basically everything is consciousness, and that it all comes from a singular point, which is source consciousness, why is there any need for karmic debt? These are three-dimensional concepts. These are concepts that are based around living a human existence. It's actually beyond me why people even would have that discussion, but I know people do. That's fine.
And so I haven't talked to anybody about this who believes this kind of thing, but they talk about the reincarnation being a trick that the ETs are playing on the human race, and that they're sending people back to reincarnate. This just seems like a mad conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
Look, if we go to the beginning, where did humans come from? Okay. Does anybody know where humans actually came from? And I don't mean from, this, generationally or theoretically or whatever, or through Darwinism or anything like this. All humans are extraterrestrials at some point. Okay. Everybody came from somewhere. And I said this to someone the other day. There's either two things exist. Either there's a source consciousness that has the ability to extend itself and exist in three-dimensional spaces. And every human that's born has the capacity to understand and grow cognitively and consciously. Or it's just all chaos, and that the chance of all of us being here now at this point in time is just an infinite amount to one, that it's just impossible for us to be here. And so from an expectation and understanding that there is a source consciousness, then it makes sense that, beings will incarnate. I do know that humans often just go straight to fear factor when they think about things, and that they're going, oh, well, extraterrestrials, it's just all a trap. But to be honest, I actually used to think when I was a lot younger that it may have been some sort of a trap or whatever. But in the end, we spoke to spirits about this and we asked them, and they said, look, think about it this way. A glass, if you're going to have a drink of water, you need to put the water into a container, right? I was like, that's pretty simple. They said, well, what about a soul? A soul needs a container if it wants to live in existence. Could that body be seen as a prison or a container? I said, well, I suppose it could. And they went through and they explained all of this. And I realised that even the universes need a container to hold themselves in, and that container may be the void. So I can understand why people believe that we're in some sort of a prison, or we're being trapped, or we're being tricked, or whatever. But without some sort of construct, there's no way for people to understand or reference their current environment. They need to have some sort of reference to do that in.
And do you feel that what's going on sort of beyond our puny minds is something that is far too complicated for the human mind to comprehend with everything that's happening in the universe?
I think that we've got a very limited capacity to understand while we communicate the way that we do. While we're trying to use words to form sentences, we're struggling to understand the totality of consciousness. When we telepathically communicate with each other, we take away all the words, and now we just use images. If I'm talking to you and I show you telepathically the universe, no words need to be spoken. You can experience and understand the fullness of my thoughts because of that. But if I sit here and try and use words as a construct, as a way of communicating what the universe is, I will never be able to do it.
So if the Zetas had a message for the human race, what do you think it would be?
That you are more. That you are more than you believe that you are. And in doing so, people should spend time understanding that they are more, that they have the capacity to not be limited in their abilities and their consciousness and their ability to contact other beings. You are more.
So can you tell us about the books then? Because there's the primer for the Zeta race. And what other books do you have?
The Zeta interviews. That's a book of transcripts of the Zetas speaking through myself. That's about 600 or 700 pages. Lots of Q&A, thousands of questions. Alien Interaction trilogy. That's about 400 pages. That's some of my story when I was developing. I then wrote a few other books, but some of the ones lately, the Zeta Mind Contact. That's just a small book about how to go through the steps to contact extraterrestrial races. And then the last one that I've just written, but I'm rewriting it at the moment, is called The Zeta Race Inside the Hive Mind, right there. And that one there. And that's the information that I've gained over the last, 30 or 40 years, but my own training that I went through to be able to communicate with the Zetas.
And how can people get hold of the books?
Oh, they just look on Amazon. If you go to our website, the primer and the Zeta interviews, you should be able to download them as a PDF. Yeah. But a lot of people, including myself, they like the tactile, a book, and so you can actually just get them printed off Amazon. We've got them on there for I think the print cost or something. That's the primer of the Zeta race. Yeah, that one there.
Yeah.
That's a pretty scientific book, that one. It talks about a lot of different subjects.
And if somebody wanted to come to one of your seances, do you call them a seance or is it demonstration?
No, we just call them a sitting.
And do you like publicize them and you do them once a month, or is it some other process you'd have?
No, well, the only reason we did one in New South Wales was because we spoke at the UFO Art Conference, didn't we?
Yeah. So we were invited to speak there, and I think we did a 4-hour presentation over the day. And then we ran a series of events, shamanic journeying workshops with our spirit guides. Paul teaches astral traveling as well. He's been doing it since he was 3.
Yeah.
And then we did a couple of sittings with the Zetas. But if people are interested in attending sittings, then they're best to email us and contact us. We don't have like a regular time or place that we do these. It's just when we're invited to go somewhere, and if there's interest, we'll do it. Generally speaking, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the sittings for us is not so much. I mean, it's interesting to do them, but I've done thousands of them, and I guess that you get to the point as you get older, you're just like, well, it's a lot of work. It is, you know, like anyone that would do them would tell you that it's a lot of work. You talk to any medium that does public work, it's energetically difficult to do these.
It's a lot of preparation.
A lot of preparation to do these sittings.
Yeah.
And the physical mediums that I've talked to talk about having a circle, and it's the same people every week, week in, week out, and they don't have people coming in. And it's about the energy of the people. So do you have a circle, or
we have a home circle that meets every week, and some of those people have been with you since goodness knows how long.
So in the beginning, I just like every other medium, I sat with the same group of people twice a week, 7 people, year in and year out, because I thought that I was just going to develop as a spirit medium. Cyan had a circle as well. Then I started to be told by them that they were seeing extraterrestrials sitting in the chair, and I said to them, well, I don't believe that, prove it to me. So they got a video camera and they started taking some footage, and when I looked at it, I thought, oh my, those spirit people look a bit strange, don't they? And we realised that they weren't spirit people talking at all. So then we had to go away, and then I found out about Robin, and I started talking to Robin, and he was running a website called PM for You, Physical Mediumship for You, and sort of, you know, was able to sort of then understand, well, okay, well, maybe there's something else going on. You know, the circles, they're not the same. That's the thing about it. You're sitting for spirit, you may have to do all these different protocols. Extraterrestrials, completely different process for sitting for them.
And would you ever do it on Zoom or put it up on YouTube? Or there's something, because I've talked to physical mediums before and they kind of say, oh no, we can't have our picture taken during the process. We can't have lights on, we can't have video.
Yeah, no, we sit in red light. We only ever sit in red light.
We don't sit in blackout.
We never sit in blackout conditions. We don't use ectoplasm in sittings with the Zetas. We do have ectoplasm for spirit communicators to do the voice box coating for them to speak for themselves. I did have independent direct voice years ago, but that just faded off into nowhere, which is funny, but anyway. I have sat on Zoom plenty of times.
Yeah, we work with a lot of people individually with the Zetas, and so as doing point of origin work generally one-to-one, and for that they will speak directly with the Zetas.
With the Zetas themselves,
just like this, via Zoom.
Okay, and is that just if somebody, I don't know, some people go for a medium, you know, they might want to find out if they're in the right career or if their love life is working out.
Don't
ask the Zetas, it's not going to happen.
We had somebody once asked one of the questions they wanted to ask about was their love life, and I said, really, asking an alien race about your human love life is probably a bit
So
a movie point.
we offer what are called point of origin sittings. So people come to us and they go, I'm being abducted, or I'm being contacted, or my life's this, or I'm trying to work out what's going on. We ask the Zetas if they will talk to the person, and in doing so, whether they will find that person's point of origin. They are very successful, aren't they, in doing it? I mean, really successful. And they're able to... I'll give you an example. So a person may believe that they're from a race their whole life. They don't tell us any of that information. The Zetas then come and give them the information that they need, and it could be that that race has never been heard of by humans ever, and only that one person that's believed they're from that race has not told anybody that. The Zetas will say, you are from this specific race, they look like this, this and this. We've done this hundreds of times.
Yeah. Yes.
It's a really interesting process, and it's not easy to do. It's not like you just take a breath and fall into trance and it's all over. It doesn't work that way. It takes 3 days of preparation to even get to the point where you could do the point of origin for the person.
Okay. And you have a website, people can contact you for this?
Yeah, the-zeta-connection.com, or I actually typed in one day the Zeta Connection as one word and it came up. So there you go.
Yeah, if you go to that website, it talks about point of origin and hybrid humans. It's also got a link to the free PDF downloads and all the other books that are on Amazon as well. So,
and we also run our own educational portal as well.
yeah.
So we run all of our own courses.
Yeah, we teach mediumship and all sorts of different things.
We've got about 10 courses on there. So all the courses are, there's a couple of automated courses, but most of them are one-to-one. So we teach all the way from beginner mediumship all the way through to deep trance mediumship.
Well, it's been great talking to both of you. Thanks a lot for coming onto the podcast.
That's all right. Really enjoyed it.
And I'll put the links in the show notes. So if people want to connect to the books or you, they just need to go to the show notes and get through. Okay.
Thank you very much.